the 1990s, the Los Angeles Unified School District faced an educational catastrophe. Too many students and too few classrooms.
There were 730,000 students here. 150,000 of them, I found, didn't have seats that were available during the normal school year.
You had schools that were built for 1,900 or 2,000 children that had 5,000 children in them.
There were literally tens of thousands of kids on an abbreviated school year, 163 days as opposed to 180 days. And over the course of a K-12 career, that means that student would spend 1 year less than everybody in the world that he has to compete with.
The district was failing at its obligation to prepare young people for success.
And the issue has to do with not prioritizing low-income communities that have faced unfair conditions for so long. And so it was really up to the community themselves to come together and demand a change.
Thousands of youths were being denied the fundamental right to attend their neighborhood school. Instead, they spent as much as 2 hours per day riding the bus to a school in a distant part of the city.
And if you're being bussed out of your neighborhood, you don't have a connection with your school experience to the neighborhood. Your parents can't participate in your school experience.
Overcrowding led to the imposition of year-round schedules, creating a massive economic and social burden.
That kind of calendar is extremely disruptive, particularly because in families with many children or more than one child, frequently the year-round schedule is different from one child to the other.
Connie Rice, a highly regarded civil rights attorney, launched an effort to improve the dismal conditions of LAUSD students in East and South Los Angeles. She was joined by community-based organizations, which for years had tried to draw attention to this immense problem.
There is a civil rights violation if the overcrowding is only happening to poor children, for example, or more specifically to poor minority children, or to only urban children, but not suburban children. And that was exactly what was happening. The most overcrowded schools were in East LA and South LA, what we call the corridor of misery. Very wealthy suburbs were building schools that sat empty, while our kids had no new schools and sat on the floor. That was a civil rights violation, and it's why we won Godinez v. Davis.
In the year 2000, the California Supreme Court ruled in Godinez versus Davis that the state had to prioritize funding to overcrowded schools.
The state of California Facilities Division, which controls facilities, was making sure that LA Unified and all of the other big urban districts could never get in line. That's what we sued about. We sued saying that it was unconstitutional to lock out the big districts from access to the school construction money.
As a result of the settlement, the state set aside $750 million for new school construction at the LAUSD. There was one stipulation, however.
That you cannot do what you've been doing in the past. You have to go after this money, and you only have a year to do it.
The district sought voter-approved bond funds to finance this hugely ambitious new school construction program.
The city of Los Angeles is very large, but the need for these schools was in a particular geographic area, right down the middle of it almost, which meant a great money transfer from the west side, which pays a lot of taxes, to the middle and the east side, which needed the schools.
In Southern California, the birthplace of Proposition 13, voters were asked to pay additional property taxes to support the building of new schools. This was not an easy task.
We began to size up the size of those costs, and we said we're going to segment it. We'll take it in about 4 or 5 bond issues.
We were asking voters to tax themselves to support public education.
We had to get the whole spectrum of support. We needed the families, and we needed the entrepreneurs of this town, the business folk who had the money, to both join and say, the future of this city is at stake, and we got to do it, and we got to do it now.
What we did is we figured out how to put the professionals, the construction professionals, in charge, and we did it as lawyers help the state to write the bonds. And if you put into the bond a requirement for a strategic execution planning process that is run by the professionals. No elected official, no appointed official, no one, not even a court, can undo it.
From 1996 to 2006, California voters approved nearly $100 billion in school construction bonds for use statewide.
I think the critical arguments that convinced voters to support the bond measures were the need, so really making those arguments very compelling in a very relatable way to voters. And I think the second one was an element of equity or fairness.
The district launched a series of bond initiatives to finance this massive undertaking.
And when we really communicated that to voters in a compelling way, I think they felt like they wanted to right that wrong.
To manage this massive construction program, the district had to assemble a team with integrity and skill.
And I turned to ex-military, Seabees.
I'd like to suggest the raising of a model basic unit, large enough to include the specialists and machinery to do any kind of a job. Say 1,000 men, sir. Self-contained, self-sufficient. A battalion, a construction battalion.
Right. And I can get you the men for it. Bulldozers, blasters, drillers, cat skinners, any men you want. And the best in the country.
And I got a phone call one day from Governor Romer, who said, retire from the Navy and come to LA and help me build schools. I was of the Navy Civil Engineer Corps, so what did I do? I turned to people who had been raised and trained and had the same experience as I did. I turned to retired Naval Civil Engineer Corps officers. You've probably heard the term Seabees. Seabees are the construction force for the Navy.
They know how to put a construction authority together, and so they put together this state-of-the-art, nimble, lean, mean building machine.
They were all guys who were raised in public service. They were all captains in the Navy, and so they had led in very senior executive positions before.
But let me tell you the other thing that was critical, they were dead honest. I've been through a lot of public life, and when you're spending that kind of money, $19 billion, everybody wants a piece of it. And there's a lot of influence that goes into a building project in any state in the Union. I can tell you we were very strict. There was no political pressure that made people wealthy on the side in this building project. It was because of those Seabees.
In addition, the Bond Oversight Committee was created to align the building program with the expectations of the public and the needs of students.
Our job was to make sure that the strategic execution planning process controlled, that no politics entered, that there was no funny business with the money.
And also to give us expert advice on how we were proceeding. And they were very helpful and are still there helping this district.
And I'm a huge believer after 26 years of public service in the absolute need for transparency in a construction program like this. And I know not to just talk about transparency, but to be transparent.
Safeguards were put in place by the district to prevent abuse and fraud.
We hired a full-time auditor, and we gave him unfettered access to absolutely anything he wanted to look at.
But it was an outside point of view, giving a perspective on a very large and costly program.
Grasping the importance of working as a team with a common purpose, board members avoided public conflicts over resources.
And the traditional thing in a board of 7 members is, if you're building something, I want 1/7 of it. How much you putting in my district? This board was convinced that that was not the way to go. I knew it wasn't the way to go. We had to build the schools where the kids were. And it may not have been in your board district, but that board was committed to do it right.
Adding to the challenge, the LAUSD had to establish credibility with the private sector.
Contractors felt that they couldn't get paid on time, and if they couldn't get paid on time, they couldn't sustain the business, and they weren't treated very well. And so by the time we got here in 2001, an awful lot of the more capable contractors had given up on LAUSD as a client. So part of our challenge was to get them back and to get the guys back, the contractors back, who could build a $100 million high school, get in, build it, get out, get paid.
The district also sought harmonious and productive relations with the workforce.
And so we sat down with the unions and had an agreement with them that we're going to use union labor here. And it was, I think, a very wise decision. We had no labor disputes that I can remember that slowed this project down. And it was a period of inflation, 10% a year on building costs. And so the labor agreement saved us money by being sure we got this done quickly, got it done efficiently.
We needed to make sure that spending billions of dollars in this community really returned almost an economic sustainability aspect to the local economy. We created a program called the We Build program, which would take people who had no background in construction whatsoever.
It will provide working families with opportunities to improve their socioeconomic status. It will bring new jobs to many economically distressed areas. It will create a sense of ownership for each of our neighborhood schools, and it will create civic participation and pride.
We would get those people into pre-apprentice level jobs that would help them learn the skills they needed to just show up and do a job.
I can get more opportunities, and that's why I'm here, because I want to prove myself.
The people paying for the bonds could actually benefit from the economic input of this program.
Before the program could be launched, the debacle at Belmont High School created an environmental and public relations catastrophe for LAUSD.
That was built on a gas field, methane gas, and it had been closed down. They didn't finish it. The whole city considered it an emblem of incompetence. Namely, that school district can't do anything right, because look at Belmont.
There was an awful lot of cynicism and skepticism in this city about LAUSD's ability to build anything, let alone billions of dollars worth of new schools.
And so I assessed immediately I had to solve that problem, or I couldn't do this project. And so we worked several years to solve the Belmont problem. Not only did it have gas coming up from the ground, but later we found an earthquake fault right in the middle of the buildings that had been built. It cost us money, and I knew it was going to cost money, but we had to correct it. We got it done.
In order to determine where new schools should be built, the district sought community input.
The person who was brought on board in 2000, Kathy Lippman, had the wisdom and the vision that something needed to be done differently, and that we needed to not only inform the public, but truly engage the public.
In any planning processes, you need to have community people at the table because they know what the history of the neighborhood is.
A community outreach team was assembled to canvass the city and gain support from residents for building new schools in their neighborhoods.
The only way you can really overcome this trust is by showing respect and by truly listening to what the needs of those members of the community were. When I talk about community, I don't just mean parents. I mean elected officials, I mean church leaders, I mean the neighbors across the street from the school, the chambers of commerce, the business owners, really the entire community.
Our first interaction with the LAUSD when we were invited into the discussion was to participate because we had an interest in making sure that housing wouldn't be lost, affordable housing units would not be lost in this great fervor to build new schools.
We never set out to request support. We set out to engage community, to provide information, and to allow the community to make their own decisions about what was right for them.
To achieve its goal with the program, the district had to go into established neighborhoods and seize homes.
Building schools is a very, very politically prickly process. You have to take people's homes with eminent domain. You have to sometimes take businesses. You're disrupting traffic patterns. I mean, there are just a million problems. And so it's not a welcome thing at first when you say you're going to build a complex of schools or you're going to build a new high school, which is a big, big construction project.
You know, I learned a lot about LA, and this is one of the most densely populated places in the world. As you go out around the Ambassador Hotel project, if you just look at the density around that, there was no way there was empty land available for most of these schools. We had to take land and move people off of there carefully and build a school.
We were going to the community and explaining how calculations are done when you do eminent domain, how, what's the process. We owe it to them to explain this, because part of what causes a lot of resistance is lack of knowledge and fear. So if we can lessen the fear and if we can handhold people through this process, maybe we'll be a lot more successful, and we will be able to do this through friendly negotiations and not having to go through the whole court proceedings.
And so one of the most unique things that we did, we took 130 plus sites and said, this is a part of our community we're going to dedicate to children and their education. And we're going to pay fairly for it, but we're going to do it. The board was supportive of that, and it worked. And we were very careful to take care of the people we displaced. We moved them to another location and supported them financially so they didn't get cost by that move.
Then we had to have the debate, do we do prototype designs and kind of plop down the same looking school in every neighborhood, or do we do unique designs unique to every neighborhood? And that debate yielded the decision that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build schools. Let's not use prototype designs. Let's build schools that are unique to each neighborhood.
And let me be specific. As we designed these schools, we tried to design the classrooms to where the right kind of learning occurred.
Aesthetics, accessories, and functionality were emphasized.
For example, traditional classroom, you line kids up in rows, they sit in chairs. We deliberately bought furniture to where you could group those chairs in groups of 3, 4, or 5 so there could be small group working sessions, because we know children learn together and learn to cooperate with each other, which is an important skill.
The main thing that I was really encouraged about was where the schools are located. They're in the middle of the city. They're really engaged with the urban life, with the community. There are different formats, some are just one individual schools and some are conglomerate of several schools. And I think that that's the really exciting part of it, that I do think we are building the right schools in the right place.
The Ambassador was one of the great icons of Los Angeles. Designed by Myron Hunt and opened in 1921, it hosted, together with its cabaret-style, tropical-themed Coconut Grove nightclub, the likes of the Rat Pack, Nat King Cole, the Oscars, and several U.S. presidents. Its unique hybrid of Art Deco and Mediterranean style was instantly recognizable as the social center of the city.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, here truly is music by Martin. Freddie Martin is singing saxophone and orchestra, broadcasting from fashionable Coconut Grove in the world-famous Ambassador Hotel, located on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, California.
On June 5, 1968, minutes after declaring victory in the California presidential primary, Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in the kitchen pantry of the Ambassador. The hotel forever carried the stigma of having been the site of Senator Kennedy's assassination. In 2004, the Ambassador closed. 2 years later, the once magnificent structure was demolished. After a long legal struggle, the LAUSD acquired the rights to the property. In 2007, the district began construction of the RFK Community School. It was built to relieve underperforming and overcrowded schools located in the historically underserved neighborhoods of Pico Union and Koreatown. At a cost of $578 million, it will become the most expensive school ever constructed in the United States. The school features a marble memorial depicting Robert F. Kennedy, a manicured public park. RFK Community Schools is comprised of 6 autonomous pilot schools. The classic design and ultra-modern components have now come to define many of the new schools in Los Angeles. In another part of the city, Esteban Torres High School helped to relieve the tremendous overcrowding that had plagued Garfield High School for decades.
So Torres was actually physically built with 5 buildings within the campus, which really lends itself to a whole new way of conducting schools and education based on personalization and connections between teachers and students.
The school, which opened in 2010, was named after Congressman Esteban Torres, who served in the House of Representatives from 1982 to 1998.
There's an essence here of progress by students, and it's reflected because they come here. They chose to come here. Many of them chose to stay at Garfield. Others wanted to come here to a new school to partake in this new process that the pilot school would carry out.
Many residual benefits of new schools extended to nearby communities.
And it has had an impact on the surrounding community. As you can see, little by little, there's upgrading. People feel proud to have a big school like this in their front yard or in their neighborhood, and they take pride in that, and it transfers to their habitat.
In the end, however, what mattered most was the response of the students who walked the halls of their new neighborhood school.
Welcome to our new school. Yeah!
We planted 130 of these new schools throughout this town, and it changes the nature of the community relationships. I mean, communities build around schools and the activities of children and parents.
When I drive around the city, I don't think I can go more than 3 to 5 miles without, just coming across a new school. And the first thing I look at is they're beautiful. I find them absolutely gorgeous, and they're colorful, and they're vibrant.
And what this project did was to bring light and warmth and heat and passion and charisma and vitality to an area of the city that was a very bleak neighborhood of blocks and blocks of factories and warehouses.
We have parks, we have joint space, we have pools, we have planted trees. We have really transformed Los Angeles, not only for the students and families, but for the greater community.
You see a little oasis in some communities that are distressed. So they're a catalyst, if you will, for regenerating and reimagining neighborhoods. And you've seen that all across the city.
People over and over again telling me they had never imagined this would be possible when they walk onto their first day on a new campus. Administrators who had seen, 20 years of year-round schooling. Teachers who didn't know the entire faculty because their track was off. Were having faculty meetings and preparing to welcome groups of students like they'd never seen before.
When the schools were done, it was magic to see the faces of those kids.
One of the biggest things I was involved with in my political life, and one of the most satisfying because of the very broad participation of the people in this community, from the top to the bottom. It was kind of like we're fighting this war together.
So the community's uplifted by these schools. I think we all feel better about Los Angeles today because instead of worrying about the failures of Belmont, we can celebrate the successes of this program.
In August 2013, the Los Angeles Unified School District officially opens 130 new schools. With that, the largest new school construction program in the history of the United States came to an end. Its legacy, however, will continue far into the future.